Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to the show right now Josh Radnor. Of course, you know him from How I Met Your Mother. Maybe you saw him in Disgraced on Broadway. Now he's here with a brand new project on PBS called Mercy Street. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good.
Before we get into that, you were just saying before we went on here, you were a huge professional wrestling fan
as a kid?
Oh, man,
now we're suddenly talking about this.
Oh, I got to get to that, and then we'll get to everything else.
It's something I don't even think about that much, but when I was a kid, I was crazy about professional wrestling, like all that.
WWF
all
at
of
the
it.
time, WCW?
Yeah.
All of it.
Mostly WWF, but yeah.
Who was your favorite?
I mean, I liked them all. Like, who was it? Like, Randy Savage and Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan.
Were you an 80s wrestling fan?
Yeah.
Not a 90s?
No, it was
much?
80s.
More of the 80s.
Yeah.
Right? Did you ever dress up? Do you ever make your own belt?
Yeah. My friend and I, Steve Golden and I, we were deep in.
I think every kid that grew up, 80s was the time for growing up for professional wrestling. And once you figured out you could do a flying elbow off the couch, maybe in the basement or in the living room.
I wonder if they could document how many injuries were professional wrestling related.
Well, that's why they have the disclosure of do not try this at home.
Yeah.
But it was during that time when everybody would rip perfectly good T-shirts just like Hulk Hogan.
That's right.
Fly off the couch like Randy Savage.
And I went to a bunch of the, when they would come through town, I would go, and I don't know why. To me, it seems insane now that was something I liked. It's so not my taste now.
Right.
But as a kid, I was crazy about it.
Do you ever take a peek at it now and see what's going on?
Not really.
Not really?
No.
Any of the fight stuff, like UFC, boxing, any of that?
I mean, I saw The Wrestler and I saw that movie Warrior.
Okay.
So does that count?
That counts for now.
Yeah.
When the next movie comes out related to that, watch that or you lose your status as a wrestling fan. But let's talk about your new project here, Mercy Street. For those of you who knew you from How I Met Your Mother, totally different direction that you're going. Very serious piece with Mercy Street here. Yeah.
I mean, not without its lighthearted moments, but largely, I mean, a hospital set in the Civil War is going to be pretty bloody and pretty dramatic.
It's not like MASH. You're not getting jokes.
Well, in some ways, MASH was a big influence with the writers.
Really?
So if you pay attention, I mean, there is some comic relief and there are some lighthearted moments. My character is given to some ironic, kind of cynical sentiments.
Okay, you know what? I saw the first 2 episodes, and now that you're saying that, there is a scene, without giving too much away, that involves you using a hypodermic needle.
Yeah.
That for everyone thinks that this is a trendy fad or fancy
it was new.
Nonsense, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, this is standard practice for what they would do now. But back then, people are getting mad that you're using techniques as a doctor should, based on your character going around the world and learning different stuff, that you went to use this and the guy's yelling at you for using a hypodermic because it just wasn't called for or practiced at that time.
Well, he also, the real issue is that I was using it on a Confederate soldier.
That too.
And he's a Union military guy who doesn't want me wasting opiate. He actually doesn't even believe in painkillers. He thinks pain is cathartic, which is like a crazy,
But that's when you were just in there. It's like, well, I had to do it. Like those were those lighthearted and the sarcastic moments that I guess keeps your character from going crazy with all of.
I think it's a natural. In some ways, it's like humor is a natural battlefield response or a response to the harrowing moments we have in our lives. It's like, man, if we can crack just the smallest smile, we might not die.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated with. I guess it would still fall under the category of like frontier medicine, where you're in a city that just became unionized.
Yeah,
it was a Confederate city. Now the unions got it, and they've taken over everything. You're in a makeshift hospital that's really was a hotel owned by a rich family who doesn't want to leave. They're still living there while all this is going on, but the medical practices of the time. And you always heard the stories, but in school and growing up. But when you see the visualization of it, of sawing off limbs and stuff that was gangrenous, and then just putting them in sheets and throwing them out the window. Yeah, it's like, I know it was real back then, and I know it's fake now as you're shooting it. But when you're watching that, does that still kind of make you cringe? Does that like?
Well, it's funny. My family, who's now seen the show, they think it's the funniest thing because they know that I'm quite squeamish around stuff. Okay. But my character's not. So they're like, "How are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I know that's fake blood. Like, I mean, it doesn't bother me as in a fake context, but I'm not a good kind of blood person,
right?
But I think there was a lot of misconceptions even to this day about Civil War medicine. I think people think it was a little more barbaric than it actually was. You know, you have these myths about soldiers biting on bullets and
or biting
drinking
straps
whiskey.
of leather and
exactly, as their limbs are sawed off, and that wasn't. Maybe it was true if they ran out of anesthetic, but chloroform and ether were in use at the time. Morphine obviously was starting to be in use, but there wasn't. The real issue was we're about 10 years out of Lister and Pasteur discovering, bacteria and germs, all that stuff. So, they would saw off these limbs and then use the same bloody saw to saw off another limb.
Right.
And I think 3/4 or 2/3 of Civil War deaths were infection and disease deaths, not battlefield deaths.
Because they didn't have time to treat it or the stuff to treat
They didn't
them.
know.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to, they didn't know about cleanliness in the most basic way.
Yeah, they were still using leeches to suck out some.
Were they in the Civil War? I'm not sure.
Well,
it might have been, yeah.
That all the way up until, I think, World War I.
Leeches, I hear, are making a comeback.
To pull it, well, it's depending on what they're using it for. A lot of it is to pull, they think is pulling stuff out of the blood and refining the blood, like a filter.
Right.
Almost. And some people are using leeches non-medical.
Right.
They're just putting it on thinking, I did a lot of drugs or drinking, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll just put leeches on for a while and kind of filter
I'm not
the
going to
blood.
do that.
Nobody should. It's just not. You know what? Stop for a while. Drink some water and work out.
Yeah,
and that'll filter everything out. With the back to the body parts and stuff like that. And you being squeamish, were people just picking it up and go, "Oh my God, it looks so real!" Like because you have a foot with a bone sticking out.
Our makeup crew was amazing. There was one girl who was literally just in charge of making things look disgusting. She was like the gangrene kind of expert, and she'd make things look kind of pussy and bloody, and it was amazing. And sometimes you would look at it and you'd say, okay, I saw her do that, I know it, and then you'd go check it out on the monitor, and you'd be like, oh my God, that looks horrifying.
Right, like Mary Finney or Finney? Finney, when she's getting to the hospital and she's finding other doctors before
and he
finding
rips the patch off and sees.
Well, that, and then he's in a room where there's a couple of surgeries going on at the same time, and he stops to talk to her, exchange pleasantries. Yeah. Then he's back with the hacksaw, just cutting the bone, and you're hearing it, you're seeing it before it does the quick cut.
They really goosed the sound effects too, so the third episode, I have to do an amputation, and it's the sound they added in really. I was there. I know how it was done. I know the guy's leg was not being sawed off for real, and it still is kind of tough to watch with the sound added.
Well, you play Dr. Jed Foster. Now, this is an interesting tie to the story too, because your character is working at a makeshift military hospital here, but you're not military personnel. You're not a military doctor.
For now, that's how I start, but I become one, actually.
You're a private doctor. You explain a little bit about your story, that you've went to different cities to learn more medicine, pick up different techniques, and to be better at what you do. But it all boils down to you want to be better for your patients.
Yeah.
And the treatments that you can give them. You know that you don't have the best possible treatments for all your patients. That's why you're constantly moving, constantly learning new things to be better, and just for medicine, your love for medicine. But the background for your character is that you came up from a wealthy family, that was a slave-owning family, in that weird area of Maryland that it's kind of the North, but it really was living as if it was the South. But then you're in this town here where the emancipation's about to happen and what have you here. So what else can you tell us about this character? Because he's always seemed to be conflicted on a lot of things.
Yeah, which it's part of what drew me to the character, those kind of internal contradictions, that he's a Union loyalist, but also not an abolitionist. He comes from the slaveholding family and feels like he knows what it's like. And another really interesting thing that I found is the bar to become a doctor in that time was incredibly low. There were two ways to become a doctor. One was you would follow your friend, the country doctor, around for a couple months and observe him, and then he would go, "Congrats, you're now a doctor." And the other way was you would go to these schools that were just 2 or 3 months of lectures by these experts, and then you'd pay to hear them. You'd come back a year later, listen to the exact same people give the exact same talks, and then after 2 sessions, 2 rounds of it, you were a doctor. So my character actually he's cobbled together more of an education by going to Europe and all these different places that are more on the cutting edge of medical technology. But interestingly, when you see his mother in the third episode, she's horrified that he's a doctor. It's not like today that, it brings...
Be a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That wasn't what was going on. The fact that he left the estate and didn't take over the estate after the father died was a betrayal of the family.
Right.
And the fact that he's a doctor, it's almost like a low-class profession at this time. It became, I think, because of the innovations and because of all this stuff, it became... a much more kind of high-class profession. But at the time, it wasn't.
And especially because you're not in a city, like a respected city like Philadelphia, Boston,
well, we talked
New York.
about it. I mean, he probably did, in addition to, France and England and all these other places he'd been, he probably did work in Philadelphia and Boston.
Yeah. But you weren't resident there. That's what I'm saying. That's kind of probably why.
Right. And he's never, you'll see he'd never done an amputation before. So he is, I think... there had never been the level of carnage that they're about to see in the Civil War. So most doctors were just like country doctors. They treated, and a lot of it was, old wives' tales. They would prescribe things that were just like maybe not that effective, but maybe had some placebo stuff going on. And
the other thing with this story too is that there's multiple stories, woven through all of this. But besides your story and Mary's story, the slavery issue, because you're in a town that was just absorbed by the Union. The former slaves that are working there are finding out that even though that they're free and the Union doesn't value them as property, but as people for the most part, the white people, still aren't seeing it that way. And they're finding out that it's not as easy as they thought it was going to be by being freed and working and living in the Union there. So you're seeing a lot of their struggle as well. As how people are being treated as compared to your stories too.
Yeah, that's the they call them contraband,
right? Which
the history of that I can't speak to it as an expert, but it's amazing. We heard this guy at Princeton, this kind of one of the preeminent Civil War experts, talk about why they were called contraband.
Right.
That it actually one of the ways that I'll do the worst stab at this, but one of the ways that they were able to legally claim that they were considered spoils of war, the slaves. So they would say, you're contraband, you're a spoil of war, and we now set you free. But that's why they were called contraband. But yeah, I mean, everyone is going through.
It's a very
identity crisis seems like the wrong term, but everyone is kind of figuring out who they are against this new chaotic landscape.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because, like I said, it's a very gray line because it's right before everything's about to change and happen, and obviously the characters know like the emancipation's coming, but they don't know what else is going to be ahead of them. So everybody's still kind of like, well, it could go this way, it could go the other way.
Yeah, and everyone thought the war would be over in a couple of weeks. That's a refrain you keep hearing, which is really tragic. No one thinks they're in for a 4-year battle at all.
So this is just a very different piece from stuff that you've done in the past. There, what did you take out of this?
What did I take out of it, like
for yourself? Like what as an actor does every job, they usually take something out of that and they build towards who they are and their talents, their persona, their profession. What did you take out of this role? I went to NYU for grad school at Tisch, and we had an acting teacher, Ron Van Loo, who always said, "You're here to expand your definition of yourself," which I always like that as a kind of phrase to hold on to. That each role that you take on really expands your definition of yourself, and you realize that you have, I don't know, like Whitman said, you contain multitudes. Like there's a lot of things going on in here, and there's a lot of keys to play, and so I think in the most basic sense, when you take on a role that feels like it scares you a little bit and you feel like, I don't know if I can do this well. And then you do it and it goes well, and you have a different sense of yourself as your capabilities, and then it expands your idea of what you could do. I mean, for instance, when I got out of school, I thought, wow, if I could get a job in New York theater, that would be amazing. And then I did. And then I got a job in New York theater, and I thought, wow, it'd be great to get a guest spot on a TV show, which I kind of didn't think I'd be able to do. And I did. And then the next thing I thought, well, maybe I could do a pilot. And then I did. So the ceiling keeps raising. Right. And then you do a couple pilots and they don't go, and you go, it would be great if one went, and then one goes, and then you think, maybe I'd like to write and direct a movie. And then it's been this process of constantly
scaring myself sufficiently or daring myself to do certain things that I didn't think I could do, and then finding out I can do them, and then thinking like, oh, maybe what's next? So this is just another kind of step in that direction.
Because it's a very, because you went, like you said, you were building all your steps, you landed what most actors would die for was, I guess, the job of a lifetime by getting not just a TV series, but one that had a long run, one that goes into syndication, one that's a fan favorite and merchandise and all that stuff in there. And then you go to Broadway, which, a lot of actors do love going back to the theater. It makes them, I guess, rekindle a piece of themselves that they may have lost by doing TV for so long or movies like that. And then to go back into this role here, very dramatic. And there are some lighthearted moments, but I think I really see a different side of you. I see a different layer of you than being Ted. Yeah. Where how most people would know you. I see him like, wow, he can really pull off the lighthearted guy, but can be pretty damn serious when it needs to be and get things moving. Like you can then move in. I think you could do an evil character somewhere down the line.
That's cool.
Based off of this.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's.
Like a business or one of those law firm movies or something like that.
Yeah, sinister.
John Grisham.
Sure.
Right.
All right. I'll do it. No, it'd be great. It's funny. I played this kind of virtuous character for so long, and I love that because I think we need to see that. We want to see that. And, but there, in storytelling, you need those polarities, right? You need what is virtue without its opposite, and why do you even want to be virtuous? Like, I think I really believe in like the reasons we tell stories, like in the most elemental way, like sitting around a campfire and telling a story. Like I think it's so ancient, and so we need it somehow. I actually heard about there's some tribe that died out, and they weren't allowed to speak of their ancestors because they thought it invoked bad spirits, and because they weren't allowed to tell stories of their past, they actually died out. So there's a theory, an anthropological theory, that storytelling is as necessary to our survival as water and food and shelter. I was going to say, it
seems like it goes against basic, human nature.
Yeah, and we want to
cavemen all the way up.
We
to
want
now.
to reflect upon ourselves and our journey and what we're doing here, and all of that's really fun to me. I think I just fell in love with acting, and then I've had to unpack why I love it. Why do I love stories now that and I write and direct too? So like, why do I want to tell stories? What does it mean? What is the cultural utility of it? And I'm still in that, asking myself those questions. But.
Unfortunately, I'm running out of time with you. I know we have a hard out and you have other stuff to do. I just want to say Mercy Street is Sundays 10 p.m. on PBS. I asked this of everybody. When you were done with the series here, did you take anything from the set, a costume or prop, something that kind of meant something to you?
Yeah, I got the blue French horn.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, which was... it was the only thing I asked for, and it felt so iconic to my character. So,
for those who don't know, that's from How I Met Your Mother, not from.
Oh, you were asking about Mercy Street.
Either one is.
Oh,
fine,
yeah. Mercy Street. Did I take anything from Mercy Street? I mean, if you wore those clothes out in the world, that might be weird. So I didn't grab anything from wardrobe. And
well, not in L.A.
Yeah, that's
LA's
true.
Fine.
Williamsburg, you could get away with for
that
sure.
Too.
Everyone looks like they're from the Civil War there, but not everyone. They didn't have plaid in the Civil War. The point is, did I take anything from Mercy Street? I can't recall. But if we do another season, maybe I'll grab something.
All right. Josh Radnor on Twitter only. He doesn't do other social media.
Correct.
And that's probably a smart thing for you.
Yeah. And if there are fake accounts out there, shut them down.
Okay. It's just Josh Radnor on Twitter. No Facebook, no Instagram, no Snapchat, nothing. Yeah. Mercy Street, Sundays, 10 p.m. on PBS. Josh, thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah.
Next time you're in New York, I had a whole bunch of other questions for you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it was good talking to you.
When you come back, I'd love to talk to you again.
Great.
All right, thanks, man.